I think that perhaps the oddest thing about traveling alone is that there's constantly a really profound but beautiful, I would say, sense of loneliness, particularly when you're in a country whose language you don't understand. You're always in crowds of, the native people of that country and a whole bunch of tourists, depending on where you decided to go for the day. And if you're like me, you don't exactly love crowds. It's a little exhausting and, draining, and it's that odd juxtaposition of feeling lonely in a great crowd of people, which I suppose isn't exactly that deep. I think we've all experienced being lonely in a crowd, but because you kind of have this everlasting sense of loneliness, I think it's easy to forget that you need to take some time to actually be alone. I mean, I suppose it's always been true for me that I feel less alone when I am alone than when I am not alone, on the whole. At least. So here we are on day 7 of my visit to France. It was very gray and very rainy and quite cold, maybe the coldest day that it's been since I got here. I don't know why I said was, it still is gray and rainy and cold, although I do think I saw the sun for like 5 seconds. Unrelated to the cold and rain, the opera was cancelled. Boo-hoo, so sad. Actually, it is a bit sad. I had splurged on some tickets to the opera, 1 ticket to the opera. Matt is at work at the Palais Garnier, the real big opera house, like the Phantom of the Opera house, which I kept meaning to book a tour to, but I couldn't find a good day. So then I was like, the best way to get inside would be to just go see a show, I love a good opera, says the person who's been to maybe like 3 in her lifetime. I love the idea of a good opera. So I put on a nice dress and I headed down to that area, and I was just walking around the Galerie Lafayette, which is a very big mall. It's actually in several different buildings, and I went into the food one first because obviously who even cares about clothes? On the other hand, I wanted to buy all of the food, but I was chowing down on some, babka or something like that when I got an email saying that the opera performance for the day had been cancelled due to the strike. There's strikes going on in Paris right now, if you didn't know. Which, okay, I understand why they're striking and protesting. Good for them. I can't really complain. The ticket will be refunded to me. But yeah, a little bit sad, because I was really looking forward to that. Honestly, because I have not been to a live performance of any kind since pre-2020, which is a little crazy. So I was really looking forward to being in a theater again, especially one that beautiful, and seeing a live performance. But it does make me just think that, when I get back home, I should actually buy some tickets and go see some things. Anyway, because that was canceled, I wandered a lot more around the Lafayette galleries. I went over to the clothing side, not for the clothing, but because you can go to a terrace on the very top floor, get some views of the very windy, cold, rainy Paris. Woo! And the middle of that building is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. The architecture is just chef's kiss. The next several days are also supposed to be pretty cloudy and possibly rainy and decently cold, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel because by this time next week it is supposed to be getting much warmer and a little sunnier and more like spring. I really never put together in my head that spring and winter overlap in Europe. But now I'm watching reels of, places in France and places in England and stuff, and I'm seeing that people are being like, oh, look at the beautiful flowers, it's spring, everything is blooming, but all the people in the videos are still wearing coats and scarves and hats, and I'm like, how did I not notice that before? How have I never noticed that? It is spring and it is still winter, and I was not aware of that before coming here. I've only ever been to Europe in the middle of the summer, y'all. I see a slight bit of sun. Hello, come out, shine upon my face. So I don't have a lot of solid plans for this week because I am prepared for it to be rainy. Towards the end of the week, when it is supposed to be warmer, I do have Versailles booked, and I'm thinking about going to Disneyland Paris because even though I haven't yet been to Disneyland California, having lived there for 2 years, this one feels a bit more pressing, like maybe I'll never come back to France, so maybe I should go. One thing that I probably do need to do within the next few days is figure out what's happening at the end of my time in Paris. My thought so far has been driving the Loire Valley and going to a butt-ton of castles. Right now, because I'm feeling a little drained, my brain is starting to go, you know, you could just go to London because you've been there before and they speak English. But I don't really want to pass up the chance to see more of France just because at this exact moment I'm feeling a little depleted. So I'm going to leave that choice for another time, and there's a very loud plane going over right now. And for now, I'm gonna go color and eat some chocolate. Tally-ho! Bonjour! It is day 11 in Paris, and I'm feeling quite lovely right now. It feels like I've kind of settled in a little bit, like I'm not rushing out to do things anymore. I slept in today and didn't even leave the room until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I think I've mainly seen all the stuff that I really felt like I had to see, and now it's more like, just chill and experience the city. Let your legs take a break. But in general, there are a lot of ups and downs on this trip, and that's totally okay. I think expecting traveling to be all happiness and excitement all the time is just unrealistic. There's quite a bit of melancholy and loneliness and introspection and creativity and reflection and sometimes even just sadness, and that's totally okay. I think there can be a bit of a sense that, like, if you're not happy, then you're not grateful or you're not okay. But on the contrary, I can be not happy and still completely okay because there is depth and importance to a vast spectrum of emotion, and I'm really grateful to get to experience all of those emotions under new circumstances. And if you can't tell by the tone of this video, I'm clearly experiencing quite a range of emotions. Anyway, tonight I had a very lovely moment of peace after dinner. I was walking through the Luxembourg Gardens, which are absolutely beautiful this time of year. Ugh, the color palettes of the florals. I don't have words. But it started to rain, and it was enough rain that you could actually like hear it on the leaves above you. So far none of the rain has been like psh. It's just been light sprinkling. But this was a little bit of a heavier rain, so I took refuge in one of the mini chairs that are all around all of their parks. Amazing. Under these two giant trees that overlapped in the center, and it was just totally dry underneath. Not a drop was getting through. And I just sat there for the longest time, listening to the rain and the birds and just not doing anything. And it was amazing. It's moments like that, usually involving nature and quiet and stillness, that tend to be the most magical for me when I'm traveling. Which is honestly why I think I end up feeling a bit conflicted when I see all the beauty of like art and architecture, because I find those things stunning as well, but usually when you're observing them, you're surrounded by crowds of people, and it's not like a comfortable environment for me as an extreme introvert, so I never feel like I'm fully able to just take in the beauty in front of me and really appreciate it, and it leads to this whole conflicting thing in my brain about how long I should stay and how many pictures I should take. And anyone have a crazy brain like mine? In much less poetic news, my feet are dead, which is another reason why I've been slowing down, because I just can't walk this much apparently. But I thought I'd give a little update on what I've been doing in the last several days. So Matt actually texted me that night and said that, surprise, he was getting a day off, which we did not expect him to have at all. So that was really exciting. And I was like, all right, well, what's the one thing you want to do? And unsurprisingly, it was go to Disneyland. We went to Disneyland the next day. We just went to the main park, and then at the end of the day, it was raining quite heavily. So I think the fireworks were probably canceled, but we didn't really stay around to find out. But we hit Disney Village a little bit at the very end there. And it was so nice to get to go with him. I was planning to go regardless, but I mean, that's one thing that I would really rather do with him. Not really as many cool restaurant options at Disneyland Paris. We've kind of come to realize that that is like a Disney World exclusive. But I will say there's always a secret, and we found it. Walt's restaurant Went in there and we were like, do we need a reservation? Because every other sit-down restaurant, when we tried to make a reservation on the app, was booked. And he was like, no, I can take you right now, but it's like a fixed menu. Are you okay with that? And we were like, yeah, of course we're okay with that. Who cares? And then you go up to this absolutely beautiful restaurant on the second floor, overlooking Main Street. The food was simple in concept, but really delicious. Y'all, that's the secret. And having that in the middle of the day so we could chill, amazing. Any woozy woozies, it was really nice to have a full day to spend with Matt because I have been seeing very, very little of him and we have not done anything together. The next day I slept in and started taking like my chill days where I don't run around trying to do anything. Then I went up to all the passages. You're just walking down a street with all of these buildings and then there will be just this one single entrance, and if you go into it, it's this whole shopping area. They're usually beautifully designed architecturally. It's usually like really cute shops. These were a lot of bookstores and art stores and toy stores and then little like cafes and stuff. I wanted to get some dinner before going home, but most of the cafes in those areas were like the split service ones, which you find a lot in Paris. If you see something that says like continuous service on it, that does not mean they're open 24/7. It just means they don't close in between lunch and dinner. And a lot of other restaurants will close in between lunch and dinner. And unlike America, where dinner places reopen at like 4, the dinner places here don't open till 7. So I was trying to like wait out until 7 so I could go to one of these restaurants, and I noticed that there was a library across the street from me, the Richelieu? My French is not improving. So I went in there. It's absolutely beautiful in this main room, lots of chairs. It was very full of people, but of course it's a library, so everyone's being quiet and still. My favorite things. So I literally just sat in there for a while and did some sewing and did some writing, and that was very nice. I love a beautiful room where no one's talking. On day 10, I wanted to explore the island that has Notre-Dame on it. I kind of metroed up to above the area and walked along and then explored the island and then kind of explored underneath it because there's a bunch of bookstores down there, including Shakespeare & Co. and the Abbey bookstore. Like, y'all. Paris has some amazing bookstores. And in general, just sort of an appreciation for books. Like, there are so many libraries and bookstores. At the Paris flea market, there were tons of booksellers all down the Seine in those sort of very picturesque green, I don't know, they're like fold out things that are on the wall. Most of those people are not only selling like drawings and paintings and souvenirs, but they're also selling books. You just see booksellers all over the place, selling old books, new books, all books. So yeah, if you just want to go on like a library and bookstore tour of Paris, it's still gonna take you days. And it is delightful, because waxing back to my poetic self, no matter how much loneliness I have been feeling, I never feel lonely in a bookstore. Never. Anyway, moving on. I also walked through the flower market on the island, which is absolutely stunning and simultaneously made me a little sad because I wanted to buy all of the flowers. And I, of course, can't because I don't live here. I did end up going inside Sainte-Chapelle. Of course, you can't go in the Notre-Dame right now. It is still destroyed. It was definitely very interesting to walk around it. They have a lot of plaques and like a story all the way around on the wall showing you like how the restoration is being done. And you definitely have this really, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but I had definitely had an overwhelming sense of sort of the sadness of that loss and what it would have been like to be there when the fire happened. Yeah, I don't know. This is where my brain goes. But Sainte-Chapelle is also on the island. It's really just sort of one room to go into. Well, I guess it's two because you have like the lower room and then the upper room. But you're basically there to see this one room, which I didn't realize. I thought it was more of a whole cathedral sort of thing. But that one room really was worth like the 30 minutes I spent in line, quite honestly. It is absolutely stunning. The stained glass is unlike anything I've ever seen. That was definitely worthwhile, highly recommend. And that brings us to today. I really did just kind of plan on seeing the Luxembourg Gardens today and that area, but I did end up going in another church while I was kind of on the way there from the metro. I don't remember the name of it. I'll write it. It was very beautiful. It was very nice to see. Then I walked through the gardens a bit, which, as previously mentioned, are gorgeous. And I saw the Pantheon, you can see clearly as you're looking through the trees, which also gorgeous. And I was like, you know what? It's like 4:30 now and they close at 6, but like, psh, why not? I can make it. So I tromped my way over there and went inside the Pantheon, which really I only needed like an hour. There's not a whole bunch to see inside anyway, so that worked out really well. Very, very beautiful, lovely to walk around and look at the ceiling. Y'all, why don't we make ceilings like this anymore? Why not? Does it really just cost too much? Do we not care? Was it just a trend? I think we should put more efforts into our ceilings again, because there is something so incredible about looking up and your jaw just falling open. We need more of it. Also, the Pantheon is where a bunch of big ol' historic people are buried, apparently, in the bottom, including the Curies and Louis Braille, Victor Hugo, Alexandre Dumas. There were several others. So you can go down below and walk through the crypt. So that was interesting. So I will be back on the last day for another little chat. Bye! Hello! Welcome to my last day in Paris. It is day 15, and look at this. It's not night for once, and I actually have light. Be more lighted. Yay, more light. God, I love light. It's been a good 2 weeks. I do feel like I really got to see a good chunk of Paris. I know I didn't see everything, but I think that's kind of good. Reason to come back at some point. But picking up where I left off last time, the day after I last chatted, I of course went to Versailles. Probably my favorite day of the whole 2 weeks, let's be real. Despite the fact that it involved probably the most leg and foot pain. My feet have been on a downward spiral, and they have not had enough time to recover. I must say, though, that if you don't have a long time in Paris, if you've got 3 days, 5 days, a week, whatever it is, I would definitely recommend taking an entire day. You'll need an entire day. I could have done 2 or 3 days there, quite frankly, and going to Versailles. It's worth it. Not necessarily for the thing you always see, which I feel like is like the Hall of Mirrors and the Golden Gate out front and everything. Yes, gorgeous. Stunningly beautiful. Also, though, 1% of the gorgeousness that is there. Every single room is the definition of opulence. The gold everywhere, every single ceiling is so stunning to look at. Like, the saddest thing to me is that I can't just lay down on the floor in every room and actually give the ceiling the attention it deserves. I would like a no tourist day in Versailles where I just like cart a yoga mat around and lay down in every room for 10 to 30 minutes depending on the room and just stare at the ceiling. Of course, there's also all of the art and the tapestries and the rugs and everything. The palace is stunning. It's also very crowded with guests every day, all the time. I avoided going on a weekend, so I think it could have been even worse, but it was pretty crowded. And like, that's something that you really do have to be prepared for. It's so easy to get caught up in the videos that you see online that are done by either influencers or like travel people who are specifically brought in when these places are empty, or who come really early in the morning, whatever it is, and they get these beautiful shots of non-tourist filled touristy places. So you really do have to keep in mind that when you go there, there will be people everywhere. Which is why one of my favorite parts was actually after I left the palace and everyone was kind of just splurging about going in sort of this one direction. So naturally I was like, well, what's over there in the other direction where not as many people are going? And it was the orangerie, I guess is how you'd pronounce it in French. The orange garden, the citrus trees. So I wandered down there, wandered through this whole garden. But in the back of this garden, or actually I suppose it would be the front of this garden, underneath the huge, I don't know, like the land where everybody was standing and staring down into the garden and then choosing not to actually go into it and move on to the rest. In all fairness, I did not at that point realize how much the rest was. There were these giant doors that were open, and I was like, all right, invitation. And I went through them, and it was just this massive, massive tunnel all the way around this garden. There was no one in there. Ceilings so high. I mean, obviously, this is not like the inside of the palace. It's not ornate. But was it awe-inspiring? Yes, largely because there was no one there. And it smelled so good. Maybe this is a me thing that I really love, but the smell of like earth, and it was like chilly inside. You walked in and it had like a refrigerated chill almost, and it was just, it was so empty. I spent a chunk of time just wandering back and forth, and like there's this huge statue at the end of it. There's just statues sitting around. And you're like, why are these here? They didn't have space for it anywhere else, I guess. That goes in like my top 3 favorite parts of the day, was just walking through these tunnels, because after having been through the entire house, through these crowds of people standing in a massive line to go to the bathroom, getting to be almost entirely alone in such a huge, massive place. 10 out of 10. Anyway, after that, I did finally realize that there's a whole lot more to the gardens. Like you can't really see them all. It's so much. And most of the gardens is not really like gardens. It's not flowers and stuff. It's trees and sort of mazes of shrubbery and stuff. So a lot of it, it's like very, very peaceful to walk through and very beautiful, but it's not necessarily like, oh, I need to go see every single part of this. So there's a lot of the gardens that I did not see, but I was really happy that I stumbled upon this one that I forget the name of, so I'll look it up and write it, because there's a movie about the making of this. I don't think it's a well-known movie. It has Kate Winslet and Snape, Alan Rickman, about the woman who designed this garden and how she constructed it. And, you know, it's probably not very accurate and highly dramatized, but it was a good movie. And I was looking at how all of the rocks have been hung there, which is so interesting. There are these really cool porous rocks, and then there's like shells, and everything has been like wrapped in wire. So it's hanging like scales rather than just being like cemented in as you would expect something to be done. It's so fascinating and so beautiful the way this one little garden has been created. So I am so glad that I happened to stumble upon it, because I really didn't mean to. I walked all the way out to the Trianon. The large one was under construction, so one less thing to see, which was honestly a good thing. But then there's also the petit one, so I walked through that a bit. And then there's these whole section of grounds behind that, another whole area to see. She's got one of those, by she I mean Marie Antoinette, because I'm pretty sure this was all built for or at the request of Marie Antoinette. So she's got, you know, the gorgeous gazebo? What do you call those? Gazebo on steroids. There's little rivers going through with waterfalls. There were Canadian geese and swans all around. There was this whole little rock orifice thing with waterfalls behind it. And I was like, what is this? Why is it here? It started to feel so much like a Disney park, which really made me wonder, like, I wonder if Walt Disney ever went to Versailles and like got ideas off of that. I've never heard that anywhere, but it wouldn't surprise me, because then you keep going and surprise, there's a fairy tale village that she had built. According to what I read, she had this built so that she could take her kids and go back there and have fun, like basically kind of playing peasant and everything, but also so they could learn about farming and gardening and animal husbandry and stuff. So yeah, she just had like a whole little fairy tale village back there built for her, and it is gorgeous. If you ever want to feel like Belle, go here. I wanted to start singing A Little Town It's a Quiet Village and go running down the stairs, and y'all, it's so beautiful. And like all of the gardens were actually being gardened. There were plants, there was like crops of lettuce and leeks. They were clearly being actually used and upkept. And as I was walking around, I was like, it also kind of smells like horses back here. And I just kept following. I was like, oh, there's some more buildings kind of back in the distance there. Guess I'll keep walking towards that. Oh, it's a farm. It's a whole working farm. That's part of the village. It's a little bit set apart, probably because they didn't want to smell the animals that much. But it was a whole working farm with ponies and pigs and goats and sheep and geese and bunnies. Anyway, every bit of that day was really, truly delightful, despite the foot pain. It was just so nice. Also, the weather was freaking amazing that day. Beautiful sunset that night. I sat in sort of the first section of gardens right outside the palace and watched the sunset for a while before I left. All just so stunning. So stunning. Anyway, then I came home and discovered that I had several blisters on my feet. So I decided to spend the next day doing nothing. I literally holed up in the hotel and tried not to walk and just did some reading and some sewing and some coloring because I had bought a train ticket for the next day to go to Reims. Reims. Insert a better pronunciation here.
Reims.
Let's just say one day is not enough time for your feet to fully recover. Reims was gorgeous. The whole day was beautiful. It was nice weather again. It was Sunday, so most things were closed, like all the stores were closed, but stuff that was there for tourists more was still open. I got to see the Notre-Dame of Reims, which is stunningly gorgeous, huge, breathtaking. Worship was going on there because it was Sunday morning. And then I also wandered down to the other big church there, the Basilique Saint-Remy. Also gorgeous, also huge. That one, it was big, and I just strolled around the whole inside, and the stained glass windows they had there were stunning, gorgeous, beautiful stuff. I did end up going to a winery because this is the Champagne region. I think Reims is trying to be the unofficial champagne capital, is what I read somewhere. So I had to go at least try champagne and tour a champagne place once. There are so many of them there, but I stumbled upon one that had not only gorgeous buildings, but it had just like a nice self-tour, so I could do it at my own pace. So I went down into the caves there, and those were very creepy in a very cool way. Also, they were using the caves as like an art installation location as well, so like every room that you went into had different art installations there, and it was very interesting. I actually sort of toured backwards. You were supposed to go in a certain loop, and I accidentally went the opposite direction, and as such ended up being in a lot of places where there was no one, and I was just walking down these very dark, chilly cave corridors, and there's like offshoots on each side, and like when you look down, you can't really tell if it keeps going or if it stops, or if there's bottles of wine there, or if there's, maybe a monster living back there. Very fun, very enjoyable. Again, enjoyable when there weren't people around, which is a theme with me. But yeah, that whole day was quite enjoyable. It was unfortunately just very painful. So I've learned a lot on this 2 weeks to apply to hopefully upcoming trips. I would love to travel at least once a year. And I think what I've learned is that I really do have to give myself dead days, down days, something in between, because otherwise you just reach a point where you're having a really enjoyable day, but you're kind of in so much pain that it's a little bit of a conflict. Good times. What does that mean for the upcoming 10 days of this trip that I still have left? I don't really know. I know this is probably a lot of travel videos by now. If you're watching and enjoying them, Thanks for watching. So join me in the next video for a lot of castles, maybe. It's been real, it's been fun. Later, taters.